Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Insights. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Here in South Africa, spring has just sprung.
Absolutely. It's very nice weather we're having.
If you're in the US or elsewhere a little bit up north from us, it will be autumn or fall. The leaves have fallen.
Fall has fallen.
And it might be the start of a new school year, new university. We have a lot of people who've recently joined Syft, joining a new job.
Yes. Lots of new chapters starting, new things happening. And we thought it would be nice to speak to some of our colleagues and understand how they feel about new things, what they have as points of advice for starting new jobs or new chapters, speaking a little bit about new things that they've learned from books they've read.
Yeah, so this is something a little bit different, a little bit interesting. We have colleagues from all different departments across Syft, and I hope you will enjoy. Oh, and we are joined by Gareth Macbeth, who is an engineering manager. Thanks for joining us, Gareth.
Oh, no, thank you very much for having me. I think it's my second time on this podcast, sipping chairs, same room at least. But yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome to have you on season 2.
Is it season 2 now?
Yes.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Cool. Maybe you can start by telling everyone a bit about what you do at Syft.
Perfect. So, yeah. So as Alex just said, I'm an engineering manager here. So I've got a team of, I think there's 9 at the moment. So 2 team leads beneath me who basically manage most of my team. And then I liaise with my team leads as to what projects people will be working on, spec sessions for those features, thinking of how we build in observability and scalability into our systems, and basically just looking at it at a holistic level rather than the nitty-gritty, per se.
Awesome. So what are some unconventional business tips that you could share?
I think one which, although yes, obviously you pay for it in the future, but one that I think is a very important tip is to not over-engineer too early. So what I mean by that is you don't want to build the perfect infrastructure or the perfect product from the get-go. The reason being is if you wait for too long to launch something, or you get everything too precise, you might be building the wrong product. You need the client feedback. You need to have something in the customer's hands so you know, and you can iterate on that product rather than building what you think is perfect. So you might not be necessarily solving everyone's needs, just your needs.
That's a perfect is the enemy of done.
Exactly. No product's ever going to be perfect, and it's never going to be complete. I mean, as we see with Syft, we're iterating on it permanently, even though when we thought probably 2-3 years ago, we were like, okay, cool, once we've built consolidations, that's it for us. We're done. What more is there to build? And we're still building, and there's a lot to still build. So that's just continually going.
And listening to your customers.
Exactly. That's one thing I think we've got a big feedback loop with at Syft as well, which is super beneficial, and we can see it in the product. That's how it's benefited us.
Yeah, absolutely. And what advice would you give someone who is starting out a new job?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. Obviously, there's a lot of tips and ideas floating around there, but from my 2 cents, I'd say a key thing is to try and stand out as soon as possible. Although it's a controversial topic and point of view, work-life balance is obviously super critical to us, so we're super important at Syft. But as a new joiner in the working force, you've really got to make your mark, got to stand out and really how do you become better than anyone else? How do you make it yourself known to the business? And one way of doing that is putting in the graft, putting in that overtime, not necessarily for the business, but putting in the overtime of skilling yourself up on new languages. Like if you encounter an issue at the office, how do you upskill yourself so that time, if someone else in the business encounters it, how can you assist them going forward rather than just learning in small batches? You just got to make yourself really stand out. So I think putting in the graft while you're young, while you've got the time, and while you don't have too many responsibilities, definitely pays dividends as the years go on.
Yeah, I think really good advice.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I think obviously I just encourage everyone, especially what I've seen in the engineering space, is you don't have to be qualified to do the role you want to do. So if you want to do engineering, if you want to learn how to do software development, you can upskill yourself. You can do the courses. You don't have to get a varsity degree for it. There's a lot of resources online nowadays that I think just opens up this whole world to people. I really would encourage people, even if they're not necessarily going to use it in their day-to-day, it's always good to keep expanding your knowledge. Like for me, for example, I would like to learn more about the business side of things rather than the software side. So that way, if I ever wanted to build my own product, I'd have the holistic knowledge, not just one isolated field study.
No, I think that's really important, and not just for developers. I think really any job today, there's so much that you can learn online, that you can teach yourself. If you want to learn something about something else, I think go for it. You can really grow in so many different directions.
Exactly, except medicine. I would say maybe you require a degree for that one. I wouldn't recommend doing an online course.
There are a few things that are a little bit too specialized.
Yeah, agreed.
But something I can definitely relate to as well, having studied film and then English, and now I'm working in marketing and product marketing.
Your role is adapted drastically.
Yes.
You do a lot more than what you originally signed up for, which is great. I mean, that's, as again, shows like you put in the graft and now we get to where we are. So
That's
super
great.
beneficial.
Awesome. Thank you, Garrett.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
We are now joined by Hanneke Strumpfer, who is a product engineer at Syft. Thanks for joining us. Can you maybe tell the audience a little bit of what you do as a product engineer?
100%. Yeah, we do a lot of things. We have to obviously know the product very well. So sometimes we assist with support. We assist with a lot of testing of new features, and then also quite intimately involved in the development of new features. Although we don't do the coding ourselves as product engineers, we have to do research on what are the kind of features that customers would like to see in the market and how best to provide these kind of features. And and then we work very closely with the designers to get mock-ups done for these features. And once that is done, we work with the developers to actually get the feature built. And then finally, there's the testing, and then all the feedback that you gain to see, is this feature actually well received? Are there small things that we missed that we might have to rework before we maybe roll it out to a larger portion of the market? That's in a nutshell, I guess, what we do.
Nice. A lot of collaboration with different teams.
Yes, very much. I think in a way we kind of like the central point it's like the go-between between all the other teams. So yeah, in a way we like the jack of all trades, but master of none.
Tell me about an influential podcast that you've listened to.
Yes, I've actually found a podcast recently that I've really been enjoying. And I think for anyone interested in AI, it could actually be, quite a nice one to listen to. It's by the TED Collective, so also very well produced. It's called Your Undivided Attention, and it's all about the softer side of AI. So basically the big moral questions around it, the what if questions, what if it becomes sentient, and how are we going to introduce this technology into the world and do it responsibly. And I think even in the product team, it's quite a cool theme for us to consider, because we are also working on AI features. And yes, while our product might not have the, I want to say, ability to be as risky in terms of like other products when it comes to AI, if you can imagine a self-driving car or certain things with like companion chatbots, there's a lot of like moral questions and risks around it. We're obviously in accounting, we don't foresee our bot being a naughty rogue bot in our accounting software, but these are still things that you have to consider. So yeah, podcasts like this, it's very cool. It gives a bit of it makes you think deeper about AI and how you approach it in a product context, but also in the world. Should we be more aware of how this is shaping and influencing our lives?
I think very interesting. And we've spoken a lot about AI on the podcast from all sorts of different angles, that I think that sort of philosophical moral question is also so important to consider.
Yes, and very, very interesting, especially if you're sitting in traffic. What's better than to ponder these kind of things?
Definitely. Makes the long drive a little bit more bearable.
Oh, absolutely.
Next, we've been asking people if they have any advice for someone who's starting a new job. You've started this job quite recently, so this might be fresh in your mind. What advice would you give someone starting a new job?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's always a bit intimidating starting a new job, but I think the best advice I can give someone is don't be afraid to put your hand up and feel like, oh, I'm not going to volunteer to do something because I don't know anything, because you're never going to know anything. Especially you could have been that person at your previous job who almost like knew everything, and everyone would come to you and ask you for advice and you point them in the right direction. And then you started a new job and you're going to have to learn things and get up to speed with things. And the best way to learn is just kind of throw yourself into it and put your hand up, volunteer to do things. Even if you're not 100% sure what's going on,
And later on, you might have that moment of like, sure, what have I gotten myself into? But it's the best way to learn. And ultimately, it makes it fun. You never go to work bored because every day is like a new challenge. There's so much that you are like continually learning. And it's a great way to also get to know people around you, because the more things you volunteer for and put your hand up, the more you interact with people in different teams, and also get to know people around you.
And you might even end up on a podcast.
Yes, exactly. I didn't come to work today thinking I'd be on a podcast, but here I am.
So, moral of the story, I don't know.
Never
don't try new things, you're going to be stuck doing the same thing every day.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, apart from the fact that Syft Analytics and Xero are absolutely awesome, I think that's that.
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
For those of you who've been watching Beyond Insights for some time, you are probably familiar with this face over here. This is Larica. For people who don't know you, can you give a little introduction to who you are and what you do at Syft?
Of course. Thank you for having me, Alex. It's always nice to be here, sitting in the wrong chair this time. I'm Larica Steenekamp. I head up our customer experience team at Syft. So it means that we're the first port of call. We look after everyone's immediate needs, and we try to do a good job at that, explaining the platform. And I'm also pretty involved on the education side of things, a bit of a new project for me, but I'm really excited to get into that and hopefully get you even closer to loving Syft more than you already do.
Very excited. I'm also very involved in the education space, so I'm very grateful to have Larica joining me now.
Looking forward to working with you, Alex.
And now we're starting with something very near and dear to my heart, which is an influential book that you've read. And what made you think about
I was one of those reading children. I read all the time. I think I now don't have as much time for it as I would like. But one of the books that probably influenced me most was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And I think it was probably influential because of the time that I had read it. I was pretty young, like early high school. It's very dystopian. It's almost similar to 1984 by George Orwell, but I think that idea of creating a society where everything's predestined, you can't choose, you can't really make anything of your life, you can't really decide how you're born and what you can do, and the whole concept of happiness not being grand, I think has really stuck with me, and I love that book. I think it has had a major impact on my life and how I see society and how I see interacting with other people.
It's really interesting. I also read a lot of dystopian science fiction, and people are often like, why would you read such sort of depressing books? But I think they speak so much to reality.
100%.
They are set in this world that on a surface level, it looks completely different.
Yes.
There are all these strange laws, strange people, things that don't make any sense. But the more you read it, the more you go, that looks kind of familiar. That looks kind of familiar. Is this actually kind of plausible?
100%. It's almost an exaggeration of our current events. It's generally social commentary, which is something I love. Like satire, also really, really important. So, no, I love reading stuff like that. I think you learn a lot about the human condition.
No, definitely. And I think that exaggeration sort of, for me anyway, it helps me to get into that social commentary more, because sometimes when it's the news, it's too close.
Yes.
Kind of almost don't want to interact with it on that level, but when it's just slightly exaggerated, it's somehow easier.
Yes, I fully agree with that. The surrealism makes it better.
More accessible.
Yeah, more
somehow.
accessible. I don't know how that works, but it's definitely been my experience as well. Yeah.
And as we're talking about new things, people starting a new job, starting university, going back to school, is there any advice that you would give someone who's starting a new chapter?
Yeah, I've recently started a new chapter. I think we all start new chapters pretty often in our lives. It's just what we define as a new chapter, right? Sometimes getting a new bank account is also a new chapter. just making that decision to buy apples instead of bananas for some time, also a new chapter. But I think one of the most important things for me has always been to create context as early on and as soon as possible, whether it be starting a new year in school or starting at a new company or starting university or moving house or whatever. You need to understand the context first. That's how my brain works, at least. So I need to get the bigger picture and then I start diving into the details, but I need to understand how the company works. How does the structure work? Who's in charge of what? Who owns what? That sort of thing. It's the same with, let's say, you going to a university. How does the university structure work before you figure out what you're supposed to learn in each module? Rather understand the concept of university and what you're trying to go do there, because if your context is correct, it's much easier to make decisions and to do the right thing when you're unsure of what to do because it's new. I think that's probably my best advice.
That's good advice. I think it helps you to know what to prioritize, what to focus on, what the purpose of something is.
Yes, I think it's probably because I'm very aligned with purpose-driven decisions. My sister always says that I have principles. She means it in a good way. I don't think she means to say that most people don't have principles. She just says that I don't actually follow rules. I just follow principles. And if I understand the rule because of understanding the principle, I will adhere to it. But if it doesn't make any sense and it's not principle driven, I have a hard time following it. And if you understand the context and the concept, you can understand the principles and it'll help you stick to your own principles, right?
So how would you differentiate between principles and rules?
Oh, this is a really good question. Well, I'm an accountant, right? And we love to say that accounting is principle based, and then we print textbooks with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of principles, which sometimes feels a bit like following a rule. But to me, a rule is something that a rule can be born from principle. I think that is very important. But a principle is something that aligns with a bigger purpose, right? We're trying to get something to work. We're trying to make something happen. Okay. So if your principle is to do no harm, you needn't have a rule that says you shouldn't drink and drive. Because the rule of not drinking before you drive is there to ensure that neither you nor other people get hurt. Yes. But if you aren't trying to hurt people, or if you're actively not trying, or actively trying to not hurt people, rather, that way, lots of nots there. Let's try that again. If you are actively trying to not hurt people at any time, you won't act irresponsibly towards them. So to me, the rule would be don't drink and drive, but the principle behind it is don't endanger others or yourself, right? And I think that to me is the difference. So, and principles are easier for me to understand.
That makes sense. It's the big overarching idea. I was trying to find another word for principle.
Yeah, overarching idea. I love that. But that's exactly it. It's exactly it. And then the rules are more detail focused, we also need them, right? But I always believe it's very easy to understand the detail if you just get the context. No.
Makes sense. Do you have any unconventional business tips, life tips, or things that you've learned while working?
Things that I've learned while working. I learn every day while working. I'm very privileged. Maybe I just started out really dumb. I'm learning all the time. But I think it is important to have that sort of learning mindset as well. I think you can learn from everybody. But something that I think I've learned while working is that you shouldn't really spend time getting things from 95 to 100%. The curve is not in your favor. You need to do everything to the best of your ability, right? But very often there is someone who can pick up that piece of work you've done and take it from 95 to 100 in like 5 minutes, where it would have taken you an hour. And I think I learned that as a trainee, because you would spend a lot of time on a working paper ensuring that everything is perfect. And that's not wrong. But then the manager would still have notes because they are your boss, right? They need to also coach you, and you don't have the full picture and the full context and everything. So you need to get to a place where you are comfortable with not getting it right and sort of giving your best attempt, almost like a minimum viable product, right? You have this and it's working. Let's test it. And if it's fine, it's fit for purpose, then we run with it, else we iterate. Another thing that I think is really important that I've learned from working is that balance is important, but it's not easy to achieve, but it's also not the way we think it is. Sometimes we think work-life balance means that you spend as much time at work as you do in life, right? And that I always struggled with that because I like working, so I tend to work quite a lot. Some people might say it's a character flaw, and I can also agree with those people, right? You can find arguments for both sides, but I think the balance lies in when you are working really hard, you should be working really hard. And when you are resting really hard, you should be resting really hard. And when you are reading your book, you should be doing it really hard. And when you are running, you should be doing it really hard. You know what I'm saying? Like everything you do should add value to your life, right? It sounds very philosophical and very like as if I'm getting it right. I wish I were. But balance doesn't necessarily mean that you're spending the same amount of time on everything. It just means that it's just as important. So if your job is really important to you, but let's say playing a piano exam is really important to you too, you needn't spend as much time on the piano exam as you would at your job, but it needs to hold the same level of importance.
Yes.
You need to not think about work when you are practicing for that exam. If you get what I'm saying, and when I'm trying to get to, it's something that I'm not necessarily good at, but it's that sort of thing of when you're on leave, be on leave.
Yes.
But when you're at work, be at work. I think that's something that I've had to learn. We're getting there. It's a process.
I think it's tricky as well because I think some people might hear you say this and think, that sounds very intense. Like you have to be 100% doing this thing, and that might not work for everyone.
100%.
I read an article a while ago, I think probably during COVID, when people were talking about work-life balance a lot because suddenly people were working from home and the boundaries aren't as clear when you're working from home. When do you turn off? When do you log out? And that's still a problem that people have now.
Yeah.
But the idea that was in this article was of work-life harmony.
Yeah,
that's
perfect.
Because balance makes it sound like you were saying, like it's a scale. They have to be the same amount of time. But harmony is more, is it working for you? Do you feel like this is harmonious? Everything is coming together.
Yes.
That you're doing the right amount of work, the right amount of rest, the right amount of whatever else fills your cup.
Yes, exactly. And I think that harmony also speaks to a concept that I really like, which is it'll even out. Right. Sometimes I work 15 hours a day and other times I work 4 hours a day. It depends on what needs to be done, and it depends on the urgency of the thing that needs to be done. It will even out. You can't have all the balls in the air at all the time. It's impossible. So that whole concept of sounding really intense, some days I do nothing with purpose. Right, I love it. So purposefully doing nothing. I don't leave my house. I don't see any people. I hardly wash my dishes. I just exist. And it's because I tend to be very intense. That's just how my personality works. And I'm like that. I'm very extreme. So I do everything to the extreme, whether it be nothing or
Everything.
Everything, exactly. So I think just understanding that you can't do everything all the time and that you need to rest as well. That's that sort of thing. It's something
and that not every day is going to be as productive as the previous day.
Exactly. And that's also important, right? A concept that we learn in finance and costing when we start teaching that at a very basic level, like to second years. How do we actually cost a product? One item that we include there is labor. And your labor rate will always include idle time, because you want your customer to pay for the fact that your laborers exist, right? Not for their output, because that's basically impossible. So if they're working for 6 hours a day and chilling for 2, you're charging the customer for 8 because you need to pay them for 8.
Yes.
And sometimes you have a 10-hour day and sometimes you have a 6-hour day, and that evens out to 8-hour days, right? Which is what we're trying to achieve. So you can't be, and some days your entire job will be to think. Yeah. And that's not time wasted. That's really important, because you were planning and you were processing, and we are humans, right? We're not consistently the same all the time, and we shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with people listening today?
From any of the other questions that we had, I have to remember them now. Unconventional tips for
you've learned about business.
Things I've learned about business. Know where your cash is. That sounds. I know I used to work sort of adjacent, close to this guy who manages millions of rands. Their asset book is insane, and he knows where every single one of his rands are. Like, it sounds insane, but he literally knows exactly who owes him what. He wants to follow up on the tiniest of amounts. And I think in business, knowing where your cash is really important, because then you can manage where it goes and manage where it comes from. So for business, I think cash management, very, very important. Another thing, like maybe if you're in school, the thing that helped me most during schooling was packing my bag the day before. I feel so accomplished. I feel so ready. It's like I can do anything. It's the same now. It doesn't take longer in the morning to pack your laptop bag than it would in the evening. But doing that in the evening, it just makes you feel ahead of the day. Like you.
It absolutely does. I can tell on the nights where I've left my computer out, I haven't packed things, and then I get up in the morning and it just takes me so much longer.
Everything
really feels
it's like everything is so unstructured. I don't know where my things are. What am I wearing? Everything feels like that. So yeah, pack your bag the day before and know where your money is.
Good practical advice.
We try. Thank you. Of course, lovely chatting with you as always.
We are now joined by Bronwyn Sinclair, who is a product designer at Syft. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You can tell everyone a little bit about what you do at Syft.
Okay, so I'm part of the design team at Syft, which is a very broad term, I think, because it really encompasses so much of the visual aspect of what we do at Syft. So, a little bit of animation, a little bit of, branding, and kind of managing some of like the marketing assets and things like that. But I think at the moment, my primary role is really working on the design of the product itself and how that looks and how it functions, and just trying to make things as easy as possible for users to navigate and do their work when they get to the other side of using the product. So that's me.
Oh, awesome. It's been really nice because we've been hearing from people from all different roles in Syft and the different parts and how it all fits together.
Nice.
So maybe we can start talking a little bit about what advice you would give someone who is starting a new job.
Well, I think, I'm in quite a good position because I've only been at Syft for a year and a half. So it wasn't that long ago that I was starting a new job myself. I think, the biggest advice that you can give anybody, especially, and it encompasses starting a new job, but also just starting a lot of new things in your life, is, I think, give yourself a little bit of grace, a little bit of understanding that you are not going to know everything, and it's going to be a learning experience. It's going to be a big step. There's going to be a lot that, you've got to figure out and grow into when you start something new. But at the same time, you've got to know what you don't understand, know what you do understand, and don't let that become a barrier to yourself. Like, don't accept your own incompetencies and your own insecurities. Be aware of them, and I think take every opportunity that you have in this new position to just learn from other people in your department, other people in other departments. How does your job interact with other jobs? What can you learn from other people? How can they help you? And really just, take every opportunity to grow yourself and learn more. And I think in any job, the first 3 months are really critical. So just, hard work pays off. Just give yourself those 3 months to dive into everything, work really hard, and you'll start to see opportunities come to you.
I think really good advice.
Yeah. It's always daunting, I think, when you have to start something for the first time and you're not sure of the environment you're in or, who works there, what your role is going to be. So, yeah, just take it as it comes.
And I think especially on the point of being intimidated by the things that you don't know, I think a lot of people come into their first job and maybe you feel very confident, you've just finished your degree, you think you know everything about all of these subjects, and then you come into the working world and it's like, haven't seen half of these things before, don't know what that is, but being able to ask people, not feeling afraid to ask.
Yes, and like when you come into a new role, I think a lot of the time you don't know what you don't know. It only comes a lot later where you suddenly start to feel like, all right, actually, I really want to learn more about this because it's something I'm not aware of. But just having that self-awareness and allowing it to come to you as you experience new things is really important.
And then a slightly different question. I know you read quite a lot.
Yes, I do.
So what book are you currently reading and what's it been making you think about?
Well, I think, I'm not so much of a non-fiction reader. I do delve far more into the fiction side of things. So currently I'm busy reading the Live Ship Trader series, which for anyone who enjoys a bit of fantasy is a really great series to delve into by Robin Hobb. I think it's important to balance yourself between non-fiction and fiction books because there's definitely stuff to learn from, both genres. But just on the fiction side of things, I think, if you do want to delve into fiction, I think there's a lot you can learn, especially about empathy, understanding, and just people in general, how people work, how people function and interact, and how we're all entwined. And I think it really helps you develop a little bit of creativity, a little bit of imagination, which I think for my role and my job is quite important, is trying to think, of outcomes that are maybe not necessarily always at face glance. But a little bit of empathy, a little bit of critical thinking and analyzing like why people do things and, how you can deduce what's coming next. And then also just, I think if you do enjoy delving into fiction, you can always start to think about, how to operate in an environment that is not necessarily one that you're familiar with, which takes me back to the first point of just, putting yourself in like a new place and trying to figure it out and understand it, and how do the laws and structures all fit in together and work. And I think that really helps you develop a little bit of critical thinking, even though, you're not necessarily reading something that is true life. So something different maybe, I hope, that you can learn from there. But that's where I am at the moment. And yeah, if you are in a creative role, I think just it's always important to kind of, take in everything that you can and learn from as many different like sources of books and sources of media and film and, everything like that you can.
And I think that's really good advice. I think also what people don't often realize with books, and especially with fiction, is that it's part of making you sort of a well-rounded human being.
Yes, exactly. Like you really learn to think about things different to yourself and, maybe imagine scenarios that you've never experienced, which is always great for, I think, just personal growth in general, not necessarily just professional growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with our audience?
No, just, good luck with the coming months. And yeah, I hope somebody has taken something that I've said and, gained something from it.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
And now we are joined by David Goll, who is a senior software engineer at Syft. maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Syft.
Hi, I'm David. I started this company about 9 years ago. Been doing a lot of dev work, building different features, and doing some business stuff at the start before we had a bigger team. But yeah, just sharing my background, just developing now, but at the start some business stuff.
Awesome. So what are some unconventional business tips or maybe things that you've learned in your years of work?
I think the most important thing is understanding the domain you want to have in the business. For instance, like understand what the overall space is in the business you want to start or something like that. You need to know, like, for instance, okay, if you're going to enter into the insurance game, there's going to be a lot of legal and like bureaucratic stuff around it where you have like industry regulations, same thing with healthcare. You need to know who is also playing in that industry, what products already exist, what how they're doing, what are their market size, are you hoping to capture some of their market size, are you trying to make your own market size? Before you even start thinking about a product, I think the first thing is to decide on a space that you have good domain knowledge of, something you understand, as well as something that works well for like innovation, where you're not going to have a lot of regulation, not from like a bad side, but that's not going to like hamper what you want to do. And I think the other thing that's quite important is to build quickly and then get feedback from your customers. I think like having that early feedback is so much better than just, developing something for 4 years, you've developed the wrong product and then, nobody will use it. Just kind of getting out something that works, something that, provides value, and then people will tell you, oh, okay, I like this of your feature and I like that of the other feature. And yeah, I think like that's kind of where I would say from the business side, what I found was most insightful, I guess, or unconventional. Life tips. Ooh, let's see. I think a lot of times some problems seem very like big. They are like, it's always on your mind and stuff, but a lot of the times you have a lot of good things going on in your life. You have good family, good friends, but the thing that'll come up in your mind is the thing that's like going wrong.
Yes.
And what I like to think of, if the problem can be solved in one day, like for instance, like let's say you don't have a romantic partner or something, that problem can be solved in one day. And if the rest of your life is going well, you can't be that far away from perfect, you know what I mean? So just being, taking a step back and seeing the things that you have got good going on with you, even though it's difficult because there's something that's, like important to you, but just know that like problems can be solved and they'll be solved in their own time. Yeah.
Oh, some very good advice. Thanks. I think so. To recap, looking from a business perspective, really good to do your market research. So you don't just create a product without thinking, is there a space for that product? What else is happening in the space? Will people actually use this? Who are your competitors? But then also when you start building it, make sure that you build quickly and that you're able to adapt to customer feedback and that you look for that customer feedback. And then again, about perspective in your own life. There are always going to be challenging things, but finding what you can be grateful for, what's working out well, and focusing on that, I think it will help you to solve those problems down the line. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. For anyone who has watched a few episodes of our podcast, you probably already know Wenzi, who is one of our fellow hosts. For those who don't know you, maybe you can give a little introduction.
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Wenzi. I'm one of the senior partner success managers in the UK region.
Awesome. So for people who don't know what the title means, what do you do day to day at Syft?
I do plenty. So I think my main role is to ensure that the customer has the best experience of the platform. So I go with them from when they initially connect their client entities on Syft, get them trained up, get them comfortable using the software, and then help them with any resources or building of like reports that they require.
Awesome. So we're talking about a few different things today. One of them is, what influential books have you read and what have these made you think about? Maybe you can pick one book that you've read.
So I read a book called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, or Halliday, I hope I'm saying that correctly, where he essentially puts forward this idea of stoicism in life. And he's essentially trying to get people to understand the importance of stillness, honestly. So how can you center yourself, keep yourself calm in the way you make decisions? And I felt that based on that book, I took lots of learnings in my day-to-day life.
I think that's a very difficult thing in the current world that we live in, where everything is so busy. People are always trying to do things, or not trying to do things, people always are doing things, right? Whether it's work, even trying to pack all these sort of productivity life hacks into your free time. The idea of just being still, I think, is somehow counterintuitive to the modern way of living.
100%. I would completely agree with that. I think, you know, as human beings, we've always got our minds going sometimes at what feels like 100 kilometers an hour. So to be able to sort of center yourself, find some sort of stillness, whatever that means to you, doesn't necessarily mean sitting and meditating. It could mean running. It could mean, you know, listening to some music, but finding a way to center yourself so that you can make the best decisions possible, I think has helped me quite a lot personally.
And to people who are now starting, as we see the new school year, starting at university, what advice would you give people?
I would say be open-minded. So I think at various stages of life, the idea of going outside your comfort zone is not always your first thought or your first port of call. So I think be open-minded. I think lots of the time you find you make decisions which in the moment don't quite make as much sense as they do maybe with the beauty of retrospect. So be open-minded, try out things that might not make you feel comfortable but might make you grow in certain ways. And you'll find for the most part that you are benefited from those decisions more than if maybe you're stuck in your comfort zone and what you know.
No, I think that's a big one. And a lot of people that we've spoken to about sort of advice for starting a new job, it's something similar about being prepared to learn.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think you never stop learning in life, right? And I don't mean to sound cheesy, but honestly, you never ever stop learning in this life. So if you attack all new opportunities, all new challenges with a completely open mind, you might not know how it's going to end, but you're just going to go into them anyway. More often than not, you find that you benefit from that type of thinking.
What are some of the things that you think you've learned while you've been at Syft that maybe you didn't expect to learn?
I think those could probably be put into two categories. So there's soft skills. So the idea of coming into work every single day with people who might be completely different to you, right? You're coming into work and you're trying to make this particular scenario that you're in, depending on like what space in the office or in the business that you're in, work. So finding ways to interact with people who might be slightly different to you. And again, if you go into it with that open-minded perspective, I feel for the most part that you find yourself better off than if you'd sort of stuck in your comfort zone and did things your own way with, I don't want to say a closed mind, but you didn't open yourself up to this opportunity of being a bit more open-minded. And then from a sort of hard skills perspective, I mean, we deal a lot with finances and we deal with accountants and we deal with businesses. So from that perspective, I've picked up, based on my varied book of customers, how certain businesses work, what works for some might not work for others. And I think it's been quite a nice mix of soft skills as well as hard skills, which I think even later in life will probably serve me quite well.
Any unconventional business tips that you've picked up on?
That's a difficult one. Unconventional business tips.
Or maybe things that you didn't expect would work in a business, to put it another way, or didn't really think of before.
Honestly, from a personal perspective, I would consider myself someone who's a bit of a perfectionist. So if something isn't going to work out in the way that I expect it to, previously I would just not do it. Whereas I feel like now what I've learned is that old mantra, fake it till you make it. So almost put yourself in uncomfortable positions. So the theme is quite similar. Put yourself in uncomfortable positions, trying out challenges that you didn't know you could succeed at, because in time, what you think might happen will catch up to what you actually know. So I'd say just fake it till you make it.
It sounds like show business, but I think there's something that everyone can learn from show business.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably not articulating it in the best way, but the idea that it doesn't always come to you immediately, but in time, if you put yourself in those positions, you'll learn it, I think has always served at least me well in the business space.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are a lot of things that you learn along the way that at the time you might think, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, this is the completely wrong direction. And when you look back, it's actually helped build up the skills that you need to do what you do today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, lean on people. If you work in a business like Syft, I don't know if I'm allowed to say how great Syft is, but if you're working in a place like Syft where help is so freely given, lean on those people. So in the same sort of vein of fake it till you make it, you've got people around who might be more knowledgeable about a certain topic than you. Lean on them. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because that's another thing I've learned, is asking questions is the only way you're going to learn in a business space. So lean on people's knowledge if you don't have it yourself, and in time you'll start to pick it up and you'll end up being the person that people ask questions.
Yeah, I think that people are often afraid to ask a stupid question.
Yeah.
They think it's going to make them look bad, but if you don't ask those questions, you don't learn the answers.
100%. 100%.
Anything else that you think our audience should know or think about?
I'd say set yourself goals, and now I'm going to get really cheesy. Set yourself goals which you'd like to achieve in time, but take things day by day. So it's probably something that I've picked up from that book that I mentioned earlier, but it's easy to get sort of lost in the mess of trying to achieve things right now. Set yourself a goal, keep that in mind, but take things day by day. And I think for the most part, you'll find yourself quite happy.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay.
Of course.
Thank you so much for listening and joining us again on Beyond Insights. As always, it's lovely to have you here. Just to recap some of the things that we've learned today, I'm going to hand over to Alex so that we get a few insights there.
So I've taken extensive notes through all of my interviews, but actually what was very interesting was we had a lot of overlapping themes. So thinking of business tips, business advice, we had a lot of people talking about the importance of nothing being perfect the first time around, not expecting perfection, but rather iterating and reiterating, getting client feedback, finding out if your product, if that's what you're working on, is something that actually has people who want to buy it, who want to use it.
Important.
Very important. And another very important thing that many people mentioned was continuously learning. So whether this is in business, starting a new job, starting at university, at school, wherever you are in life, keep learning. It's never too late to learn something. It's always going to be to your advantage. And also being able to put yourself out there, feel a little bit vulnerable, ask the questions, even if you think they're stupid questions. You will only learn if you ask. Another thing that was mentioned was the importance of getting out of your comfort zone. So really trying new things. Again, it's another way to learn. It's something that we like to do a lot at Syft, especially Lurica and I, who have taken many different roles, many different jobs. You always learn new things, and if you're just open to trying that, there is so much that can help you grow in that capacity. So signing up for things, and then also being prepared. Yes, packing your bag, the nicest. Always making sure you are as prepared as possible, but then I think also giving yourself a bit of grace. Yes, knowing that you will fail at certain things, but you can try and try again. We spoke a bit about the importance of finding stillness in your life, of reading to learn about people and about society and how you can bring this into your work and into life in general. We also spoke about how to make yourself stand out in the workplace. And there's a fine balance, I think, between working very hard, which obviously is always very important and very valuable, but you can't always be productive. You can't always have perfect balance. And perhaps work-life balance isn't really what we should be striving for, but something more like work-life harmony and finding what works for you. So in a nutshell, those were all of the lessons that we've learned in our back to school special. We hope that you enjoyed this and that you found something meaningful that you can think about. And please, we have open comments on Spotify at least. So let us know in the comments what your tips are for going back to school or starting a new job.
It's always lovely to hear from you. Until next time.